I'm back.
Me too.
So's Alan Bruce.
What's in the box, Tony?
I think it's Optimus Prime. Anyway, here we are. What we're going to do is get this out. We're going to tear it out the box on camera. So we're going to unbox it first and have a look at what you really get for your, well, near enough £1,000 here in the UK. Well, as you can see, I mean, this is a huge thing. Look at that. I mean, I don't know what it's going to be like when it's all out the box, but lift it out, Al, all of the box. Oh, yeah. Yeah, we'll look at that after. Well, these are the first things you get. You get a UK mains lead. Wonder what you got for your £1,000. You get a USB type A to B, common. You get a little flimsy manual, and it really is flimsy. We'll come back to that later, no doubt. And we get the unit. Just, yes, slither it out, Al. Well, as you can see, I mean, this is no small, light unit, is it? No, it's not that light. We'll come back to all that later. But you do get this great big, they say, 7-inch screen, which will be a bit of an improvement over the MX-5 when I looked at one of those from Headrush, where the screen was, I think, about 4 inches, something like that. That wasn't really too useful. Well, on the face of it, it all looks quite nice. You've got lots of things to go at and look at. But as always, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to pull it apart, take a look at what this darn thing's made of. Yeah, so I'm going to start screwing this apart now with Alan, and I'll be back in a moment. Okay, for the very first time you've seen inside the Headrush Prime. It's a big board, to say the very least, and it sort of splits in half like so. So this part here is actually the bottom, and over there that's the top part. So cutting a long story short with the stuff over here, this part here that you can see is probably looking after the screen, and this part here, well, as you can see with the switches and the rest of it, looks after all the switching and that sort of thing. This is where the controller pedal mechanism comes off and goes to a small board down here that you probably see on camera right now. And I'm not going to talk about much of this stuff on this part because, well, to be honest, it's not really worth the effort. When all's said and done, you've got a load of switches and a screen. What more could I say? Other than it's well enough made and that sort of thing. So needless to say, we've got this bottom board that's got 2 components in it. Well, actually, it's got 3 components, but one of them, well, we'll talk about first, and it's the one at the end over there. You can see right there. Now, that looks to me like an AC to DC power supply that looks like it's been bought off the shelf. So it's probably been bought off the shelf and made by a third-party company. That's a very common practice, and it was one that was even inside Fractal Audio's FX3, if I remember right, and the FX2. And products like that that are big-bodied and need a bit of separate power rather than some tiny amperage. That's my guess with that one. How good is it? Will it last? Well, who knows? It's a switch mode power supply. I can see the 240 volts coming in. I can see these few wires coming out and going down to this main board. Okay, well, moving on a little bit. You knew it would be coming up anytime soon. Is this main carrier board, they call it. It's there. Interestingly enough, that was made, well, revision C of this board came around on the 5th of November 2021. Of all things, 2021. Not 2022. Well, here we are in near enough May 2023. So I would say that's a 2-year development. That's pretty corky, that is. And we'll have another closer look at this board in a moment when we get down to taking this processor's heatsink off, which should be, well, interesting. Moving along a bit, you can see on this edge you've got a couple of ribbon cables that go across to this secondary board just over here. You can see it. We're going to look at it in a second. And you've got this main other one here that seems to go off to the screen. So I'm not too worried about any of that stuff. We're going to come back and have another look. But let's move across to this thing over here. Okay, well, as you can see now, this is the main I/O board. And it's connected with these connections across here to the other boards, the control boards that are on the top part of this device. But here they are, there's loads of chips and a few chips down here, one of which has got a bit of an orange on it, and there's a bigger one there. Well, we'll come back to all this a bit closer in a little while when we go and look at the chips. But for now, you can see that, well, the I/O is actually made of plastic. Now, plastic's okay as long as it's okay. And when it isn't okay, you can mark my words, you'll be coming in here, or somebody will be coming in here and swapping out plastic connectors, but may not last the course. They might not. Who's to say? If you're rough with your gear, and let's face it, everybody talks about having this darn thing out on the road to get rid of the amplifiers. Well, these are going to take some stick. I just wonder how long they'll last. It's a great question. I can't answer it, but maybe you will be able to answer it when you buy one and it fails at, I don't know, 2 years or something. I don't know. Looks to me like this equipment was made on surface mount type of, flow solder machines. A bit like we saw at Marshall the other day, but actually, in my opinion, probably the one that's done these is, probably just that much better than the one at Marshall. These components are really, really quite small if you see them. We've got a thing across the front here that might be for connecting to so that you can test the board. So I've seen that sort of thing before. And if I was to go to that other board that we looked at earlier, there's another one of these type of connections on that board. So my guess is that often they can put them on a piece of test equipment that tells them whether that board's okay. I certainly remember back in the 80s seeing PC compatible boards going onto a HP tester, and it isolated exactly to where the faults were. Okay, well, here's the bit you've been waiting for. This is underneath that big slab of a cooling section. I pulled that off. You can see where they mount there. And this is a rock chip. It's a rock chip RK3288. But more of that a bit later. And we've got this chip over here that's got this QR code and the rest of it on it. And more about that later if I can determine what chip it is. Maybe I can't, but I've got a good idea it's one of those that you can't copy the data off. And if you try to, it's all protected and that sort of thing. Because when all's said and done, it's proprietary equipment that they've probably spent a very long time on, and you wouldn't want somebody ripping it off, would you? Okay, well, scarily, Alan got it back together for me. Well, nearly. That's what I'd say. Anyway, the point is, we're going to press a button, and for the first time, probably, you're going to see it turn on. The button's down here somewhere. There it goes. Oh my God, it works. Who'd have thought that Tony and Alan would have been able to get that back together? It says version 3 there, or 3.0.0. Just make a note of that, won't you? Yeah, just in case it means something. It probably means, it's version 3.
0.00.
0.00, yeah. Yeah, there'll be a 3.01 or a 3.02 soon.
Oh,
congratulations on my purchase of the Headrush Prime. And by the way, just while we're talking about this, Alan, I did buy it, yeah. It's not one of them free ones, so actually everything in this video you can actually believe. Fancy that. Yeah, that makes a change, doesn't it? So I think we'll hit the button and say, let's go. What do you think? Yeah. Well, okay, here we are. I chose my TP-Link extender. It's 5 gig. But I did try the 2.41 before, and it didn't do that either. So one of the things you've got to consider is that there is no network cable to plug a network into. There's a USB, sure enough, but that means you've got to move around, and you've bought this this wireless for nothing if it doesn't connect. Now, everything else in here connects very nicely, but it looks like this one doesn't want to connect. Well, moving further on from the catastrophe of my TP-Link internet that works perfect on everything else, but sadly doesn't work perfect on this one, at least in the studio here. And it's a powerful device, so it wasn't a question of signal, as you might have saw earlier. And I connected my phone and did all the other stuff that would easily test the the Wi-Fi, and it was all perfect. You can probably see a few pictures on the screen as we go. I mean, there's not much more you can say when you've got the phone that connects perfect and the other devices in here, of which there is a lot, I have to say. And this just goes round and round and round and round and round. Well, sadly, there's even more to the story. Yes, what I did, just to prove that it was nothing to do with the, well, I say nothing to do with the device, nothing to do with the Wi-Fi, my Wi-Fi in here. I took this into the house and I put it pretty near to the actual router itself. And all this out here is connected with wires and things like that. So it wasn't a question of the connectivity in the studio not being able to somehow not reach the router, if you follow. No, that wasn't the case. So I put this in the kitchen, which was 10 feet away from the router. And there's a picture on the screen. You can see yourself how near it was. And guess what? It connected. Now, I don't think it was anything to do with the signal, as you saw on the previous shot that I put on screen. It was on pretty much 90 to 100% in the studio here. But in the house, it was pretty much the same, 90 to 100%. But of course, it's connecting to a different device, and this is where the importance comes in. It was a different device. Now, as it happens, the router itself in the house is a TP-Link device. And the devices out here are really, they are sort of like extenders. So my only conclusion that I could have is that this device was incompatible with that extender. And that's a pity, because that extender is so commonplace. So whether it'll connect now, just by chance, who knows? And I think we'll take a look at that. It's frustrating, to say the very least. I'd have to go and buy another device and pull that one out just for this. Or worse than that, if I was to go to a gig somewhere and I needed to connect, well, that really would be a problem, wouldn't it? Well, I can't say a lot, except to say that if you look at the picture on the screen, you'll see yourself, look, it's trying to connect to the other one again now, here. Even though this first one's connected, it's trying to connect to the other one, the TP-Link extender. That's running at 2.4 gig. There's a 5 gig one too, by the way, and that doesn't connect either. Neither of them do. Pain in the neck. It's sort of working its way around trying to connect to other devices. I think we'll take a look at the chips next. I've got some photographs and stuff like that, and you have had a look inside, but I'm not going to spend all day. I'm just going to, it's a quick 5-minute chat, and if you want to hop past it, it's no problem. Just go down to the text or do your up arrow and scuttle forward past the chips, and away you go. You can carry on looking at the device as I see it, which is very different than the way that some other people see it. It does change everything, yeah. It changes every Wi-Fi router in your house. Stop it, Tony. Okay, on with the chips. I've just got a quick run through here. I didn't bother print everything out this time because, well, there's no real point in doing that. Let's run down from the top of the ones I found, and you'll see pictures on the screens of each one, as always. Okay, well, the first one up is it's a PCM 4204, and it's part of a series of A to D and D to A converters. This particular one is a high-performance 24-bit, 216 kilohertz, 4-channel analog A to D converter, and they cost a massive, from what I can find, £11.77 each. Yeah, and if you were to buy more than 500, which I guess they have, they'll be even cheaper. Yeah, but the partner for the PCM 4204 you've guessed it, is a PCM 4104. And that's an audio D to A, where the other one's an A to D. This converts it back, so to speak. So it's a D to A, high-end 24-bit, 192 kilohertz, 4-channel DS DAC. That's what they said. And scarily, that one cost, when I was looking, at least £4.73. Yeah, money's mounting up here, isn't it? Next one in line, now we got past the DACs, yeah, and all that sort of stuff, is an L7986A, which is a switching voltage regulator, 4.5 volts to 38 volts at 250 kilohertz. Just for your information, they cost £1.68 each. Scary. Now, there's another thing in this unit that I'm sure you wouldn't have known about had I not been and told you. There it was in front of me, and it's on the screen now. It's a CR1220 3 volt, yeah, penny battery. And you know what they cost? Well, they cost pennies. I shouldn't say that. Anyway, they're not very expensive, but there is one in there, and my guess is when it wears out later, somebody's got to strip this thing down. It's not rechargeable. The next one was an AP6256. That's what they called it. And it's made by Broadcom, and it looks after basically the Wi-Fi. Yeah, the one we've had all the fun with in here. Now, you could blame TP-Link, but my guess is that there's a lot of TP-Links around that don't have any problems. Anyway, the Wi-Fi, it's 802.11ac ABGN. It's a Wi-Fi combo chip they proudly proclaim from Broadcom, as I said. There's also a Synaptics one, I think that was the other name I got, in the form of a SIP module, and it's Wi-Fi 5, that one is. Anyway, when I was looking for them, I found those at $1.94 each, which they retailed for the ordinary guy at about £4. But $1.94 if you're fishing around. Now, of course, we've come down to the mother of all chips. Well, at least in this. This is the Rock chip. Yeah, that's the brand. Rock chip RK3288. Anyway, I've got a few bits of information about the main processor, which is interesting. It's a quad-core Cortex A17 up to 1.8 gigahertz. It'll work. It's got Mali in there, T764, and that's the GPU that's built into it. And it strangely, well, not strangely these days, it supports OpenGL, which is a pretty old standard from what I know. It's 4K UHD H.265/H.264 for the graphic side of things. It's got one here that I didn't know, a BT2020/BT709. For you techies, it's H.264 encoder in it. It's got a USB support, USB 2 that is, not USB 3 that everybody would have thought that a brand new device like this might have had. So, well, it's got HDMI 2 support. Well, it would have, especially with screens like this. Yeah, there's got this other thing here that's, I think it says MIPI EDP LVDS RGM2, if that means anything to you. But lastly, it's got this thing built into it called the Trust Zone. Yeah, looks like TEE-DRM. And that's part of the ARM technology that's built into this particular product. Its cost, yeah, from what I could see, it cost $24. So it isn't a hyper ridiculous cost. And, you know, when this is £1,000 in England, that is. Not sure what it is in America, but it's probably $1,000, give or take. Yeah, I suppose things add up, but I don't know if they do really. When you look at the chips. One last thing, you can buy, that assembly can be actually bought as a module. Now, I don't know whether Headrush have been and bought that as a module. They could well have done that and just embedded it in their system and then carried on. Embedded modules and that sort of thing seem pretty commonplace for that chip. Just thought I'd say that. Moving on to other things in that very same module. was a thing called a PE029, and there were 3 of them at the very least. They're memory chips, and believe it or not, the DDR3 -1600s, that's all I could see about them, and they're made by a company called Spectec. There's also an Active 8846QM, which is a power management chip, and they cost as much as 0.491 of a dollar. And the last device that I'm showing you on the screen now, it's probably over that side if you want the truth. Pretty quickly over that side. Point is about this one, it's got a sticker on it. I didn't want to peel it off because it's like a serialized chip, and to me, just my simplicity here, that to me is a security stroke BIOS stroke flash chip that's serialized so that the system can't easily be hacked apart and that sort of thing, and so you don't easily get at the necessary bits that some hacker might want to. Well, that concludes the majority of the chips as I've found them, and I thought it was all quite interesting actually on this one. This is supposed to be, my guess, it is a guess, supposed to be the latest in technology that's out there. Well, it's reasonable. That's all I can say about it. It's got what you'd expect to see in there somehow. Anyway, let's move on. Okay, so what we're going to cover now is we're going to go and take a look at the top controls and the I/O controls on the back, and then we'll come back and take a look at the screen and the features that are embedded in there, and we can talk a little bit about 1 or 2 different aspects of being in there and what that really means to a user. And by the way, this is no small device, is it? It's a big device by anybody's standards. Now, I just while we're on the subject, just before I get off this, I used to have a Helix floor pedal. In fact, it's reviewed on my channel, and I'll put it down in the link below so you can go and see that. In its own way, it was a very nice device, and this is sort of reminiscent, but there are reasons why it's not. But what I would say is this: I sold the Helix floor pedal because of the real estate that it took up. You wouldn't believe the sort of size that it could actually take up in a studio. And for me, it wasn't that great. So I ended up selling that and buying a rack version. And one of the things that just ticks in the back of my head is I wonder how long it'll be before Headrush make a rack version. Something nobody's ever mentioned. Well, they wouldn't, would they? Especially if they were getting the floor one for free. Yeah, that's what reviews are about these days, often on YouTube. And by the way, I just want to confirm this, that I did actually pay full retail price for this product from Andertons of all places, who usually screw up and let me down miserably, of which they promised this on something like the 6th of April or the 8th or something like that, and it arrived about 2 days ago. Yeah, and I've been on it ever since trying to solve the other problems. Anyway, let's go down and have a look at the top first, and we can soon move on to the I/O on the back, and then we'll get down to business. Okay, here we are down taking a look at the front of the unit. It's a very impressive unit in its own little way. Yeah, let's just take a quick look at what we've got. I've peeled the protective layer off that, but I've left the protective layer on these other things across here. And if they're flashing on camera, by the way, that's just the camera that's doing that, not me. And certainly not the Headrush. So just bear that in mind. Okay, so we've got the main display here, and it's full colour, multi-touch. You can go and choose various things. You can also move them around very easy, but more of that later, I would say. Yeah, all very interesting really. You can sort of hop around quite easily with it. So it's a big improvement over the earlier thing off the, what was it now? I think it was a HX5 or a H something 5. Yeah, an earlier model. We've got this parameter knob here, or these parameter knobs. So if we choose something, you can see that these parameters will change dependent on which unit you're on. It's all very nice, isn't it? And yeah, we've got another thing here called an encoder over here. And if you look at the screen as I do this, you can see it's hopping between various devices. But if we was to go up there, we can hop between these. Yeah, all very nice and simple. It covers these other things down here. Amp cloning, which we're going to come back to. Wi-Fi enabled, cloud enabled, streaming music, practice tool. Interesting that. Bluetooth and more it says there. I've left the sticker on purposely so that you can see it. It's all good fun, isn't it? Yeah, I think so too. We've got a pile of foot switches that are, as you change the particular preset, I'll call it a preset, you can change it by this once you've selected it. You can see that these titles down here all change. I assume you can read them, I think you can. Which is nice, that is. It's a nice control board, and on my, for example, on the Helix rack I had to buy a separate floor pedal to achieve the same thing, which added up to a fair amount of money. You've got to take that into account, haven't you? Yeah, you just basically activate or deactivate with a foot switch. You can see that one there being turned on and off. Tape echo. Yeah, not much more you can say about that really. Yes, this turns on or off the particular thing that's under the foot switch, which could be a blocker rig or a scene, which you can assign, but more of that a bit later. Yeah, when all's said and done, this is a floorboard, isn't it? What would you expect? And of course, we've also got an expression pedal here, and you'll notice up at the top that it's got two modes of these expression pedals. I don't want to knock this off, but if I just press that hard enough, it's flipped across to expression pedal B. And if you look on here, it's marked up as A and B. We're on this one here at the moment, but I'm going to flip back to A. There we go. And you can see that happening in real time. Whoa. Now, one thing I didn't mention about the expression pedal, you can actually assign almost anything to this expression pedal. I do have a secondary Headrush expression pedal. Now, lastly up here, I guess, is we've got these three knobs over here. We've got one for some headphones that you can put in the back. We've got an auxiliary volume, and we've got a main volume. Yeah, there they are. What else can I say? And do remember, just while I'm up here, just in case I forget later, these little plastic covers are still fitted to mine. So, while you might not read them so well, they're very readable when you peel that off. Okay, well that's the end of the front of it. There's not really that much you can talk about unless you start going in depth a bit, and I'm going to do that next after having to look at the back. So we're going to go around the back now and take a look at the I/O involved with that section of the unit. Okay, well let's take a look around the back, and I'm going to start from sort of this end and work my way this way. Yeah, that's what I think I'm going to do. First thing we got in the chain along here is a thing called a mic input. Now, it's a bit weird having a microphone input on a floor pedal. Yeah, it reminds me of being like something for a karaoke type of guitar, type of funny, strange, I don't know. I can't get my head around that bit. I haven't particularly seen one with a mic input on it before. This is the adjuster for the mic gain. But on this, you can actually set up, you know, phantom power and stuff like that, plus 48 volts. Yeah, which is interesting, and that's adjusted later on in global settings, which I'll probably show you as we skip by. Yeah. Next up, if you look down here nice and closely, we've got a little aux input. Bit of a funny place to put it, really, I suppose, I guess. And the idea is that, you know, you connect something like a smartphone or a tablet or something, because it's an audio source that you can sort of feed into the device. Yeah, all nice, but once again, it's using those crazy 3.5mm stereo cables that everybody will tell me are, well, them are the standard. Well, they are if you're in retail and if you're a sort of consumer. But for professional music use, no, I don't really think so, do you? Put down in the text what you think about that. Next up's the pretty obvious thing. Well, it's obvious to me, is this thing here, this guitar in. And yeah, that's where you take your electric guitar, or your acoustic electric powered guitar, I guess, and you plug it in there, or your bass guitar indeed, and you plug it in there, and yeah, it's all good fun, you'll be able to hear it. Don't plug it in, well then you won't. Now the next thing up here, you can see it there, it says external amp output. It's this one here. Yeah, that one there. Yeah, and that's used for switching your amp. If you've got an amp like, well, one of the ones that is usually behind me when I'm doing reviews, and it's got one of those toggles on a 6.3mm jack or quarter jack, you can sort of change channels with it and program that in on this unit. That's not that unusual, but that's one of the things, well, that's the thing you'd use that for. Next up, we got an external expression pedal. You'd connect it into there, into this one here. And some of these have a separate switch so that you connect the toe as well, which is the one below it. So that's more like a switch, and this is more like a variable type of thing. But you get the idea. We'll be taking a look at the Headrush pedal I've got later. I'm pretty sure it's compliant to connect to this one. Okay, next up we've got an FX loop there. We've got a send and return. And these are basically TRSs, so they probably are stereo. Yeah, that's my guess. So we've got a send and a return, all nice and easy. And just next to that we've got, once again, a 3.5mm jack. Oh, they're awful. For headphones. There it is. Next up we've got quarter jacks, mono or stereo. We've got, that one's the right one, that's the left one. And they're replicated across onto these right and left connectors. Of course you can use the XLRs for connecting to, I don't know, maybe a mixer or active speakers or amp, or take your pick, or that sort of thing. Next up we've got a MIDI in and a MIDI out. You can see them there. And these are the 5-pin type, not the 7-pin type that could offer power to something else. So that doesn't exist. They're regular MIDI in and MIDI out all through. And not much more you can say about that really. Moving along a bit further, you've got the USB section, which is, again, it's pretty interesting, I suppose, in its own way. This one here, this USB type A, is only used for updating the firmware and things like that. So you're not going to be doing anything else on that one other than that sort of thing. And this other one, you can actually connect to a computer, as you'd expect it to be. Yeah, you can connect it to a computer using a standard USB cable. Connection allows Headrush Prime to send and receive the digital audio signal to and from the computer. You've seen it before. You can also use this connection to import or export rigs, block presets and set lists. More of that later. Now lastly, we've only got these two left, so it's going to get a bit boring if I'm not careful here. So this is the on and off for the power. More about that in a second, but this is where your power comes in, and notice that at the bottom there is actually a fuse underneath. You know, you can pull this out and check and replace your fuse if it's dead. But back to this power switch. It's not a switch as you might think. It's almost more like an on and off for a computer, which in fact, if you consider this unit in the way that you should, it is a computer. Anyway, that's enough for round the back for now. Well, so good so far, huh? Yeah, it's an interesting device, is this. For lots of reasons, and some of the reasons aren't what you might think they are. But we'll conclude all that a bit later. So you've had a quick overview of the top, and you've had a look around the back here. You've seen inside. I've even discussed the chips, the sort of things that nobody's ever going to show you. And you don't actually know what you're buying. It's all bad, that is, when they do reviews and they don't show you. It's frustrating to me, at the very least, because those are not reviews, are they? What they are is they are sales videos. That's what they are. This is a real review. There will be playing at the end of this, and there'll be all the other things that you might want to consider. I'm even going to show you the secondary Headrush pedal and things like that. Things people don't show you. It's that simple, really. Yeah, so we're going to move on now and have a look through this menu system. It's quite extensive in its own way, and there's a good reason why it needs to be. Yeah, let me cover that. We might as well while we're here, because it's the elephant in the room. Not me. Not Alan Bruce, he's not here at the moment. No, neither of us. It's this. I haven't talked about it up to now, but I'm going to. It's got no software. No software on the MX5, that was the one I looked at before. But this is much improved over the MX5 as far as the screen goes at the very least. And I don't know about sound so much yet, but you can make your mind up about them a bit later. But there's this point about no software. Yeah. We can all remember, at least you should remember, if you're a long-standing viewer, and if you're not, you should go and look down in the text and I'll put a link to this thing. You should all remember this thing that changes everything. Well, sadly, it doesn't change everything, and it didn't change everything. And to be honest, I don't think it ever will change everything. It isn't a device that's quite what you think it is. And that, in some ways, that's a bit like this one. But let me talk about that other one for a few seconds, the Tonex. Well, what let the Tonex down in my mind, in my opinion, was its software. Well, I could use a few words that have me banned off YouTube forever by describing that software. But I think I'll be polite and I'll say it wasn't any good. And it didn't work on Windows 10, and for the last 2 or 3 years there's efforts by customers who bought similar products that had the software that couldn't make it work with exactly the same error that I had. So to me, that is a consumer product. That is not a professional product. No, it's a consumer product for people playing at home. That's what it's for. You'd never do a gig with that, unless you're mad. But let's move on to this one, because it's the exact opposite. It's the devil or the deep blue sea. That could be seen as the devil, especially in a studio called Evil Owl Studios. But is this one the deep blue sea that they're going to throw you in, and you've got no life raft because there's no software? You've already seen the problem that I've had, that still exists, by the way, on this unit for wireless Wi-Fi. Now, you can blame my Wi-Fi, but I can assure you there are more TP-Links available in this world than there are these by a very long way, and they all work. But this unit's got no other way of being able to connect other than through its Wi-Fi. There is no connection on the back. Well, there's a USB, but I tried that, and I thought, oh, I'll be able to route through the USB into my PC, and off we go. No such luck. It's never going to happen. It didn't happen, and well, unless they rewrite the software in some way to get around that problem, well, it remains a problem. So, because this unit depends on downloading as well as what you do yourself, I mean, if you've got no Wi-Fi, you could go to a venue and have no Wi-Fi. Then you've got a product that's like half a product, because half of it doesn't work, or doesn't connect, or doesn't this, or doesn't that. So it becomes more important that this screen here and what it does is, number one, simple to use. Number two, efficient. Number three, it actually does what it says. Number four, it covers all of the things that you might need to do at a gig, if you're going to use this at a gig. People claim they can. So, you know, if it doesn't cover any of those things, or there's something else I missed, you'll get the idea though, then it's a problem, because you've got no fallback. There is no software fallback. Oh, I'll connect it to my phone. Well, you might if you've got... if your phone can get out whatever venue you're playing at, or you get the idea. And I really wanted to talk about that software. There is no software. So that is, to be honest, it's the elephant in the room. The same as the elephant in the room for this one was a problem relating to software. And I'll never change my mind on that, because I've been in technology since about 1981. Anyway, onto the screen. Let's get on with it. Let's get further. That's where I'm at so far, and I really wanted to discuss that aspect about software. Well, here we go. I hope you can see the screen okay. It should be fine. Oh, you only just touch it and away you go. Yeah, the screen should be fine, and we should be able to see most of the stuff. I don't know about reflections. You might have some reflections of me, or I don't know. It's difficult to say when you're filming in this way because I can't go and capture the screen as I would on an ordinary computer, like I can on the other gear. So just talk about this screen for a second or two and what we've got and what we haven't got. Up this corner here is really how you get to the main menu. Oh, no more up and down there, but that's the main menu. Let me go back for now. And if you hit my rig, it takes you back to the rig that was selected at the time. All nice and simple. You can see on this particular rig, it's got a load of different devices. You can double tap, for example, on this one here, that's the guitar input or the device input. So if we do that, it'll open up and you can adjust these various gains and gates and noise filters and so on and so forth. It's all there. One of the things that I thought was a bit weird right from the off is if I do adjust things, these knobs don't move. So they're not a true reflection. I know it sounds silly, but it's not silly in its own little way because there's no software. So when you back down here, well, you can argue that they're there, but when you back in here, yeah, they are there, that's true. They do scroll up and down if there's more than 3 items, by the way. Just one of the things I'm not sure I mentioned before. But take the pedal. There's a pedal. Well, let's take one of these, which is even easier. Click like that twice. There it is. You can see the knobs yourself. So if we was to go back to the main rig, those knobs, I can assure you, don't change at all. They're just static pictures on the screen. They look nice enough, don't get me wrong. And you've got this stuff down the side. I understand all that. But wouldn't it be nice if they actually weren't just static? But my guess is the reason they're static is that the processors are not so powerful. Well, Tony, what are you talking about? Well, I could give you a bit of an example, really. And it's just a personal view, remember. And when I was looking at this, I thought to myself, okay, well, I'll hit there and I can whip off through various, you can see that. I'm going off through different presets. I'll call them that for now. Doesn't really matter. We'll call them presets. And I thought to myself, well, if I turn them fast, I'll go faster, won't I? So I took a big twist on that and I moved to number 3. But I must have had about 10 clicks of that. Another 10, and I moved from number 3 to number 4, which is a little bit weird. So it just almost seems to me that the device is a little bit underpowered because it doesn't just go and it's done. Almost like there's no sort of buffering of the real stuff going on in the background. It's just a personal comment, like I said, but it makes it feel as if it's sort of underpowered a bit in some way. You'll also notice here on the CPU, yeah, you can see it, but the percentage, let me read that, is sitting at 70%. Yeah, 70%. There's nothing even plugged into the thing. I would have thought that, oh yeah, well, you'll reach 70% when it's actually processing something. Because, well, in theory, it isn't processing anything, it's just sitting there. But I know you need to know that, the actual loading on the processor and all the rest of it. Because as you add these in, of course, it loads the processor more. So the more of them that there is, the more it loads it. That's part of the course with anything. But I just wanted to talk about that it doesn't actually turn around on here as fast as you might think. It's a bit weird, really. Okay, so if we back round here looking at that one, for example, if I press this button, up comes the unit. You can change various things like colours and stuff like that. I'm not really worried about any of that. We've got a number of gates that we can choose. Yeah, usual sort of thing. I won't go into hyper depth because, well, to be honest, I don't think it needs it. It's easier to use than a lot of devices, let's put it that way. But whatever we're moving along to, we can just go to that one and hit it, and we can mess around in there also. And we've got lots of different things that we can go and choose randomly to whatever you fancy. Of course, you can make your own as well, which is, again, it's a good thing. You don't want to be dependent on, well, really a connection that isn't always there. Yeah. So I'm just randomly whipping through these. You can see that one's got a load of parameters. Dynamic delay. Yeah. And if we was to hit that button, we can go and look at some of the parameters. In fact, we've even got all the pages of it. All very simple. It really is simple. And that's the good thing about it. Okay, well, as we move around, you can see you've got some empty slots on this one. We could add things into it, but I'm not going to worry about that for now. What I do want to do, though, is I want to show you this little button up here. Because this is the sort of, well, they call it a hardware assign button. And you can see the devices that are in here. You can see them. We can change the tempo. We can program MIDI. External amp, yes or no. What mode are we in? Classic. Or there's like a, how can I describe it? A modern mode, which just changes how the pedals look if you really want the truth on the screen. That's what it does from what I see. We've got this down here where we've got A, B, C and D. We've got the external pedal, and this at the top here is the A and B that we saw earlier, what they do, if you get me. So you do the assigning. So if I go to B, it's pitch, and on A, it's a volume. I'm sure you get that. It's all really very easy. And it's the same with all this stuff. You can toggle these pedals to what you want them to be in a particular state for a particular time. Now you notice down here that there's 8 different boxes. You can see them. Basically, they're the middle 8 foot switches of the Headrush Prime. You can assign any switch-based parameters. Ones with only 2 states, you know, on or off, or A or B type of thing, to any of these foot switches, regardless of their location in the signal chain. So these can apply other things. That's basically the top and bottom. Now what you also notice as well as that you've got these other, shall we say, devices, we'll call them that, boxes if you will, that denote scenes. Can you see that? Well, these scenes basically, that's like a feature that allows you to turn multiple blocks on or off, or change multiple presets for a block in each rig using one foot switch press. So if you wanted to turn off 5 or 6 different pedals or effects, I'll describe it, maybe that's the best way. Yeah, it can do it. So if I go and have a look at this one here, this edit lead scene, well, there we go and edit it. There it is. It looks to me like those aren't particularly hyper set up, but it doesn't really matter. The idea is that you can turn on or off, you know, they are set up. That one's off, that one's on, that one's no change, that one's no change. So what I want to do is to just whiz back. You can see how they're sort of set up there, as I showed you in that scene. And if we go back to the main device, we have a look further down at the lead button, which there is a lead button, third from the left on the bottom row. It says lead on it. And if I click that, you'll see that these will change. And they're changing on or off. And I'll go back to rhythm. Off they go. Tape echo. You see, that's just doing the one, but the lead one does a number of devices. And that's basically what scenes are really all about. Changing the devices or the tones or the this or the that or the other. I did show you earlier how to just rearrange these things. You can just pick them up and put them where you like, really. All very easy, and you'll notice up at the top here that magically you've got a little star because you've rearranged everything and changed the parameter or changed the preset. I call them presets, they can call them what they like. If you go back to it, funny enough, even though I put it back, it still keeps the star. So if I was to choose this and move across to somewhere else, you'll get this sort of thing. Well, I don't want to save anything, at least not for now. Oh, and by the way, choosing rigs, if you want to choose a rig, you can touch on this and you can whip through one at a time, like I showed you earlier. You can sort of press this arrow sideways, or you can pull this down and have a look at the rigs that are sort of there. Yeah, and you can just choose whatever you fancy. Let's imagine that one. There it is. So that's a quick way to get into doing the basic stuff. Notice you've got a few things down the bottom here. You've got a mic input, which you can turn on and off. And I guess if we click it twice, that's going to be in general settings. But we've also got this other thing here called a tail. Now that's the tail off of effects. Like imagine a delay and you switch to something else. And this delay's already going on the one you're switching from. Well, that'll leave the tails on so that they carry on even in the new preset. Until they faded out type of thing. That's an interesting thing, and you can turn that on and off just by pressing a button. Now, there's another thing I want to talk about, and it's this funny little thing down the bottom here. Once again, something strange that you've probably never seen before. But if we go and tap it, the signal path. Yeah, the signal path basically is the direction that the audio signal flows from your guitar through the available blocks. And by the way, when we're talking of blocks on this unit, there are 14 that you can have. And it ends at the output of the Headrush Prime. You can easily reconfigure your signal path to best suit your needs, especially when it comes to creating more complex rigs. You can see rigs like this. So you've now got two paths. You can do things like that. It's all very nice and all very easy if you really want the truth. There's another one. And another one. Two guitars on that one. There we go. Two inputs, should I say. They might not be guitars. It depends what you're trying to do. But simple enough to be able to manage. So I won't bore you much with these anymore, except to tell you that there are a number of different paths and options. We've got the straight path, which is basically the one you're looking at now. We've got another one called a middle split. I'm not going to bore you with them too much. You've got an immediate split. You've got a dual straight path, which is the two guitars or two inputs that we saw a bit earlier. We've got one for vocals, which is, well, just as scary as it gets, I guess. Well, it is to me. And you've got another one for vocals and guitar, which is a straight path. Yeah, really weird having the sort of vocals thing. There you've got a microphone and a guitar. All a bit strange. Another quick thing to talk about is this here. We've got mono or stereo. And when we're looking at the mono or stereo, these are the choices. Default mono, default stereo. I think that's all there is. Yeah, it defaulted to stereo on this one at least. By the way, when we've modified things like this here, if we wanted to flip, it'll rapidly go, there we are, into this, save new rig. So it's a new rig, or you can save this one that's here, or you can discard it, or you can cancel the thing. Now you notice we've got an amp there, and we've got a cab down there. So let's have a look at the amp first, if I can get to it. Yeah, I can't. This particular one is a preset PV6505 plus lead, and the model is 05 PV6505 lead, which is what you would expect. And you've got these various gains, mids, post gains, lows and highs, and all the usual stuff. And you can move across to resonance and presence and all the things that they want you to have that are in that particular amp. Now, if you want to choose different amps, it's all very simple. You can just press a down button. And, yeah, you can limit what you're shown, basically, in this list from the general settings. And I'll be covering that in a little while. But there it goes. Yeah, that's that bit out of the way, really. And if you wanted to look at the speaker, same thing. You can do it with this switch, but I tend to just tap the screen myself. Once again, you've got the preset. It's a default preset. Here's some speakers. Yeah, that's the one it's set to there, default. But you can go messing around with them until your heart's content. And if you go and get the the God IRs. You could figure out 4,000 of them and pull them in here, and you could, well, you may not be able to. But you'll be messing around with all this stuff for years, not hours, years. There's some of the settings. I'm not going to bore you with them. Everybody's seen them these days. What more can I say? But actually, just before I come out of the cab, you'll notice there's an IR button there. And we can go and get the IRs for whatever we are trying to do. Cab IR, blah, blah, blah. There's an IR. 2048 samples or 1020. We'll choose one of them. Will we? Yeah, we will. Now you can go and mess around until you go blue in the face. And I'm sure you will. I have shown some of the inputs and outputs involved with this thing. And the thing about it is that because it's got vocal as well as guitar, so you can almost have like a two-device pedal. God knows why. I don't quite get it myself, but some people will, and some people will have a use for it. So you can independently set up the ins and the outs for both, and that's a good thing. Yeah, but I'm not going to spend hours going through it. There's one more thing you can do in here that I haven't specifically talked about, and that's if you've got these two inputs, or maybe, let me give you a better example, maybe one of these. You can basically mix, you can see it there. Yeah, you can basically mix the two channels, if you will, for different levels and things like that. So it's got quite a lot of control on it. And you can see it just right there on the screen, nice and simple. Okay, I'm not going to spend much time on this really. I just want to cover this while I'm floating around on the top, something I didn't particularly cover before. If you notice these 2, 4, 6, 8, the 8 middle buttons can be set up in different ways. For example, they can be used to activate or bypass various blocks, amps, impulse responses, clones, cabs, effects, as well as select rigs, set lists and songs. Yes, there are set lists and songs which we'll still cover in a little while. The foot switches can be used in one of 5 modes. As I said, stomp mode, rig mode, hybrid mode, setlist mode or song mode. The mode you are in when you power off Headrush Prime will be the mode you're in when you power back on. So it's sort of intuitive in its own little way. Well, how do you basically change the mode? It's all very simple to change the mode. Basically, if you look here, it says on these outside one, this outside top one, it says mode there. So if you hold it down, you'll notice that everything's changed. These have changed from set list, hybrid, rig, stomp, and exit. And if we press exit, well, we're back out. It's really that simple. Well, let's take a quick look. Let's do that again. Let's go to mode. And if we go into stomp mode, I'm not sure how much of the screen you can see, but you can see a bit of it. If I hit stomp mode, we've now got all of the pedals assigned accordingly to these 8 switches, which I think is quite interesting really. So we can go back again and we could flip them once again into rig mode. And now we can change rigs. You can see how easy that is to do. We'll go back again and choose another one. We've got to think of hybrid mode, where you've got the basically the presets at the top and these other things, the rhythms and leads and tape echoes and so on, and chorus and the rest. So at the top are the various presets that you can hop through, and you can set them to what you want. And at the bottom you've got some of the pedals which again you can hop through. Why not? That's what I say. Now there is a set list mode and a song mode, but I want to talk about the song mode a little bit. So if we just choose this and hop off into song mode down the end here, this screen will appear. And you'll be wondering to yourself, well, what's that all about? Well, basically, these 4 switches towards the right here, on this side, down here, they basically correspond to 4 rigs from a song in your set list. This mode can only be used when you have a set list loaded. Now, if there were songs in there, you can go and play them basically, but I'm not going to bore you with it because there are none in there. I haven't put any, well, I did put some in earlier, but it's far enough for this review, and you get the idea. So you can whip through and have a good time. Now, if you want to make yourself a new preset, just hit the plus and up it comes. So we can choose the input for the guitar. We can choose what we want down here. Well, I want an overdrive. I think I'll start with that. That'll do. Yeah, we'll go for that one. And there it is, added. And the parameters are stored down here, so we can easily get at them if we want. But that's just an example. There are so many examples, I could spend hours doing it. So I'm not going to do any of that. What I'm really going to do is go back to the main screen. Now, I have said that the Headrush pedal, this expression pedal, can be assigned to different things. And basically, the internal expression pedal here can control 2 parameters in its classic mode, or 2 sets of parameters in its advanced mode. Use the toe switch to switch between them. I showed you that earlier. To activate the toe switch, you simply just press it. It's that simple. When an external expression pedal with the toe switch is connected, it can also control 2 parameters in classic mode with 2 sets of parameters in advanced mode. Use the external pedal's toe switch to switch between the 2, just as you do with this. And scarily enough, you can see yourself that we've got the expression of the toe, and the 2 wires come off and plug in the back of the unit. That's what the pedal looks like. Great big heavy chunky thing. And as well as it being heavy and chunky, I might add that it's also expensive. It's in the, well, it's well over 100 and something odd pounds, really. I think it was about 110 or 120 pounds in England. Now, there is also, in this unit, what they call a hands-free mode. No, not hands from Germany. This is hands-free mode. And basically, choose which one it's on. I think that's the G light, isn't it? And you hold it for over a second, and there you are. Green light, and its current setting. Now, by adjusting the pedal, the expression pedal, we can involve that more or less however we want to do it. And you can exit back out of that very easily, just like that. So let's take a quick look at the file browser. We can get at that very easily from down in here, and it says browse. How odd was that? Well, that's the thing about it. It is one of the advantages of the Headrush Prime, is that it is relatively simple to use. I mean, even I can use it. So if we wanted to have a look at the rigs, there they are. We can go and have a look at what's in there. And remember, these are files, so I'm not too concerned about any of it. Actually, there was something I missed on this, and if you've got an external storage device on that USB port, you can store all these off onto the USB device, or you can store them onto a Dropbox, if you can see that. That is assuming you can make the Wi-Fi actually work with the necessary equipment in your premises. Now, as I mentioned earlier, there's a number of set lists that you can create, you know, for when different sets for different sites and so on. You get the idea. If you play guitar, you know what a set list is, don't you? A song is a group of rigs that are sorted together for optimal organisation. Basically, you're getting the right things in the right place. That's what a set list is. It's a saved collection of songs and rigs arranged in a custom order. After being edited and saved, set lists can be loaded at a later time. The feature is useful. For instance, if you need some of your rigs in a performance. In this case, you could save a set list with only those rigs so that you don't have to, well, to be honest, faff around through rig after rig after rig, which is one of the problems with most of these types of devices, while you're performing. You can imagine it. I know you can, and I can too. So how do we go and have a look at a set list? Well, basically, you whip up here, and you'll look at set lists. Well, how scary was that? Well, it was really quite easy. Now, this that's set up in here is really quite a good example, because although it's not a set list as you and I would tend to use it ourselves, you can see in here that this has been, it's sort of using its set lists for all rigs. So you could see all 50 rigs. And if you've noticed, we were only going up to about 30. Oh yeah, 30, fancy that. So the second set list in here is 01 guitar. The one after that is 02 guitar and vocals, which he's got 5. 03 is vocals only. And 04 is bass. Bass guys like Alan Bruce. Yeah, you've seen him. He'll be in here messing around with that, because that's the way he is. That's how Alan is. He's a bit of a lad, really. Actually, he's okay. But you get the idea. So if I was to click all rigs, we've gone back now, but if I go backwards if I choose that and go backwards, you'll see I'm on 50 bass vintage, blah, blah, blah. But if we was to go back to where we were into the set list and say, no, I only want the guitars, thanks. If I go backwards now, I actually only get up to 30. And you can do that basically for any set list that you want to create of your own. And I think it's a very useful feature, especially if you're gigging in pubs and bars and stuff like that. Or you get into arenas with this. I don't think so. Practice tools can be really good, because if you don't practice at all, well, you aren't getting anywhere, are you? That's one of the things. And, you know, you haven't always got a band sitting there with you. A lot of guys have, but a lot of guys haven't. If you take the stuff that me and Alan Bruce do, well, we haven't got a drummer. Alan's bass and vocal, and he does play guitar, so he's got 3 things to do there if he wants to. And I only tend to play guitar and that sort of thing, really. That's what I tend to do. So if I want to practice, I can go and load my own tracks up there, as backing tracks even. Or I could just go and load some other track that I sort of fancy playing. And this is how you do it. It's all very, very simple. You whiz in there. Whiz down here to Practice Tool. And there's nothing in there. You can see you've got the little music thing. As we click that, there is one loaded. There he is. And you'll see in a second he'll appear. There he is. Now you're not going to be able to hear it because it's not plugged into anything, but if I wanted to play, there it is playing. You can see it moving across all nice and slowly, all by itself. And if you've got your headphones on or you're pushing all this off through something else, it'd all be good. So let me stop that and come back out. So you get the idea of that. Oh, and one last thing, you can actually set up loops. You can rewind and all the rest of it from the pedals that are down below. You can't see them at the moment. I'm not going to keep moving the camera, but basically from left to right you've got loop in, rewind, play, forward, loop out and exit. And there's exit and back out. I've got a tuner, or as the Americans will say, a tuner. Yeah, there it is. You don't see much about it as it's set up, but you get the idea. You can change this and you can change this, and yeah, what more can I say? It's a tuner. We've also got a metronome as well. We can set this either on or off, different levels, different time signatures, even different tones. Yeah, it's all quite comprehensive for what it is. I won't personally use one, but you might. Now, what I will say is there is a looper. I'm not spending time on it because I really don't use them myself, and I don't want to have to sit here for hours learning this, but you've got your own stuff there. There's loads of things you can do with it. In any case, Headrush Prime, it's got this built-in looper that you can use to layer your performances. Well, the looper's operation is shown in the display. Here, you can control most of the stuff conveniently with the foot switches, and they are down below. You can't see them, but I'm going to go from left to right, bottom row, then top row. And the options on those foot pedals are start, record, insert, peel, mute, tempo, half speed, times 2 speed, half length, times 2 length, and reverse or exit out of it, which is quite comprehensive in its own way. And by the way, you can hold up to 20 minutes of audio at a time, by the way, across a maximum of up to 50 layers. That's a lot of stuff. It's one of the reasons I never bother myself. But that's just Tony. You know, I know people use them all the time, and it's comprehensive enough, that's what I would say. And just before I do leave, I couldn't see anywhere to actually record this to the maybe an external USB, you know, memory stick. That would be useful. And maybe you can, but I just can't see it. There's a lot of stuff in here to look at. Sadly, and I mean sadly, the Headrush Cloud is not going to be able to be displayed because I can't connect still. What a pain. By the way, I did notify Headrush about the problem with TP-Link and its, well, its non-working operation. And they did come back and say, oh yeah, what's the security that on it? And I've told them which that one was, and off they went, and I've never heard anything since. Well, they might come back, they might do an update, they might this, they might that. But the alternative is to rip out my Wi-Fi in this premises and start again because of this. Well, that's not happening. And scarily, if you're at a gig somewhere, I can't overemphasize this, because if you need that external connectivity and you can't get at it any other way, well, that'd be sad. You might make it work through a phone if you're very lucky and stuff like that, but be prepared, that's all I've got to tell you. Make sure you got your USB stick with as much stuff on as you can carry. Point is, the Headrush Cloud, it's a free and easy to use file sharing service that can be accessed directly from your Headrush Prime when connected to a Wi-Fi network. Yeah, using the Headrush Cloud, you can find instant inspiration for new tones by previewing, downloading and rating rigs and clones from Headrush artists as well as other Headrush Prime users. It's a good idea. It's very much like the Roland stuff and all the rest of them, really. You can also upload rigs and clones for backup purposes as well as share your own creations with the Headrush Prime community. First time you log into the Headrush Cloud, QR code shown, you have to go and register and all that stuff before you can use it properly. But then you can sort of download these rigs from different people. I know that Al Joseph's on there and one or two different people. He's the one I looked at when I was in the house doing the testing. And there is a tab called My Content. I can't show you, as I said, but you can search your own uploaded content by using the search, sort and filter features, same as you can in the Browse tab, if you remember me showing that earlier. On the My Content tab, you can also delete content by tapping the rig or clone tile to show the overlay, and then by tapping the trash can icon at the top right. So it's useful if you can get to it. By the way, I did talk about, not many seconds ago, using a USB device, you know, for backup and stuff like that. And you can do that. You can transfer your files and settings. Basically, over the USB connection, you can transfer rig, set list, model preset, loop, clone, and impulse responses and that sort of thing. All the files between your computer and Headrush Prime. They recommend creating a backup copy of your files to your computer before you make any changes, and I recommend that too. Unsupported stuff, by the way, if you're trying to copy from your PC back in, well, they don't copy. It's that simple. And there is one thing I just want to cover. I can't show it on there particularly, but I do want to cover it. But when you're using a Windows PC, you do have to download Windows drivers for this device. And if you don't do that, and you connect the device first and then throw the drivers on secondly, then you could have some pretty major problems going on with drivers. So do get it right and follow the instructions properly. If you do any recording, it's really stereo, left and right, or mono and that sort of thing, you know. Yeah, there's no multi-track recorder in this. You're sending the stuff out one at a time, as I guess you are in a lot of devices these days. Now, there is a feature where you can actually go to USB transfer there. And it'll tell you to sync. And down below, well, you can touch it there on the screen, and you'll see that it'll sync all your files across very nicely. And there it is, backed up and done. Or synced, let's put it that way around. Headrush Prime's also got the ability for what they call reamping. I'm not sure how many people know about reamping. I guess a lot do, but there'll be some people out there who don't know what reamping is. But reamping is a process that adds the tone coloration of an amp to a pre-recorded audio signal. In this case, sending audio from your DAW through the Headrush Prime and then recording it back to your DAW. It's useful for saving time because you can change the sound of an already recorded guitar track. Basically, if you think of it this way, if you recorded a guitar track that was clean and on another track with a particular distortion or amp or this or that or the other, if you don't like the sound of the recorded track that's got the distortion and the rest on, you've got that clean track, so you can send that back out to the Headrush, put it through a different amp and settings and things like that, and then send it back to the DAW and record it as a different track. And that's a typical way of using reamping, or at least that's the way a lot of people do. Me personally, I never do that really. Tell you the truth, I always think about getting it right first time, don't you? Now there is an important aspect to this Headrush Prime. Basically, it's described as an amp cloner. I tend to think of it more as a profiler myself, because I came from some of the Kemper gear that I still have indeed. But the amp cloner feature, it enables you to clone the sound of a real guitar or bass amp with or without the speakers, as well as real distortion, overdrive, fuzz pedals, and expand the amount of available amp and effect sounds in your Headrush Prime. So I could go and take that Mezzo amp over there, that M01, £3,500 device or something near there, and I could clone it. But I could only clone it, and when it's been cloned, basically, when it's been cloned, it'll only sound correct as long as you don't start changing any of the other parameters, such as treble, bass, mid, blah, 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 all that sort of stuff. So this cloning aspect isn't quite what some people make it out to be, you know, that phrase, this changes everything. It doesn't change everything at all. What it does is confuse a lot of people into thinking they're going to buy, for example, a Mezzo £3,500 amplifier and sound the same. You don't sound the same, and you won't feel the same with the playing. It is a different experience. That there is no doubt. Anyway, it's built in this. Welcome to Amp Cloner. I'm not going to actually go and clone an amp, by the way. I'm just talking about it. I'm just going to say proceed, and there it is. Asks you what you want to do, whether it's amp and cab, amp, preamp, or pedal only, and then you'd hit next. I'm going to say pedal only and hit next. Connection, so you get a diagram of how to connect it, which I think's great. So don't get me wrong, this is all good. There was none of this sort of stuff in the early days of Kemper. It was much more difficult. And then you say, okay, I've done that, and then we can say do all this stuff here. Phantom power, do you need phantom power? No, I don't. Next. Will it let me do it? Yeah, it will. And then you can set these parameters to what you need them set as, and then you can start the clone. And when you finish the clone, you can add it into your collection, if you will. It's all very good, and it's all quite interesting how they've done this one. Like I said, I'm not really going to go and spend all day doing the clone, because the review is about, yes, you can do it, rather than me turning this into a tutorial. Moving along a bit further, there's another feature down here. It says mic dry out. Well, what's that about? Leave your mic in the desert or something? No, of course not. Headrush Prime's mic dry out feature enables you to still use a microphone while you're using rigs that use guitar-centric signal paths. Straight path, middle split, immediate split. We talked about those earlier. And those typically don't allow adding FX or effects to the microphone input. This can be useful for different performance situations, such as you require the full 14 blocks of your rig to attain a complex guitar sound. And while you don't need vocal effects, you still need to sing simple backups or vocals or talk to the audience between songs for it. It's real good examples. Or you're live streaming a performance or taking online lessons using the Headrush Prime as an audio interface, and you still need a way to talk to your viewers or instructor. They're all genuine, proper ideas, good ideas. And although you're unable to add vocal effects to the microphone signal to these types of rigs, the mic dry out configuration screen still enables you to enhance the mic dry out signal with a noise gate, compressor, high pass filter and simple EQ settings. And all you do to set it up is to get in here. And there's probably some presets. Well, no, there isn't. Fancy that. So I'm not going to show you them, but you could set it up however you want it. Turn it on, turn it off, and so on and so forth. It's not rocket science, right? We are getting a little bit nearer the end of this, and I just want to clean that. And that's what you'll be doing if you've got one of these. Yeah, you need a cloth. Okay, we're nearly there. Global EQ. Well, what's Global EQ all about? Global EQ screen lets you quickly apply additional equalization to all your presets without permanently saving them. These settings are especially useful when a venue, rehearsal space or other environment has different acoustic characteristics than a room where you originally created the presets. You can imagine going to these different clubs or pubs or bars, if there's still any left these days. Anyway, if you get to one of them places where your sounds just don't sound right, but you know for a fact they sounded right where you recorded them or where you set them up is the best phrase. Anyway, if you get to one of them places where your sounds just don't sound right, but you know for a fact they sounded right where you recorded them or where you set them up is the best phrase. Well, then you can come in here and you can make up these global EQs, and you can store them, by the way, so that next time you come back to this particular venue, you can just pull that in and away you go. Now lastly, under the global settings here, there is quite a lot of stuff. There's loads of different things. For each one of these, we've got a pile of different settings. There is a lot to cover, and you don't want to ignore them. Oh, they'll do on default. Well, no, they won't. You should run through them. So you've got things like LCD brightness, rig page graphics, modern or classic, and the difference there is different pictures. You can either confirm unsaved or don't, auto assign foot switches, add cab with amp, song view, changes things, tempo led, external amp polarity, hybrid mode, hold for view foot switch, reassign foot switch, remaining storage. There's so many things. Colour modifications for the screen. If you have trouble distinguishing certain colours, you can change them. You know, even if you're sort of semi-colour blind, you could sort of change the screen. It's quite interesting stuff. You've got an audio tab, looks after guitar input, guitar output, alt guitar source, alt guitar out. On and on it goes, phantom power, vocal out, practice tool out, FX loop stereo, quarter levels, and so on. We go through Bluetooth, lots of stuff there. There's the Wi-Fi, which I'm sure you've seen 30 times in this review. There it is. What more can I say? All them there, you can see how great a signal them top ones are, and they still don't connect. There's USB audio settings in there, so you've got some stuff that you can set. And of course you've got MIDI settings, which are always important. On the MIDI stuff, there is some external MIDI control by way of CC numbers from 49 to 88 on this thing, if you want to control it. There's expression pedal changes, other info. If we whiz down to info, you can see a little bit about what version firmware you're in and all that sort of stuff, you know, all that sort of boring stuff. Okay, well, what a bit of a sight. I've got a few other bits and pieces down here, technical specifications I'll just tell you about. Its dimensions are 25.68 inches by 12.5 inches by 3.25 inches, give or take. Well, that's 65.23 centimetres by 30.78 by 8.23 centimetres for you European types. Yeah. Importantly, this thing weighs 16.53 pounds in weight. That's about 8 kilos, I believe, somewhere near there. So it's not as light as you might think. And another point on that when we finish this little section. Specifications are subject to change and all the rest of it. So there's the manual. I don't really need that. What about warranty? That's always an important thing, because the truth is, if this thing fails, you, my friend, when it's out of its warranty period, are going to be splashing out a fair amount of money, and a lot amount of money if you end up throwing it in the bin because you can't get the bits, or you know what I'm saying, the sort of thing that happens. Especially with the chips these days going out of fashion faster than you can blink. Oh yeah, that one's gone now, we've redesigned it. Sorry, type of mentality. I'm not saying that's applicable to Headrush, but I'm not saying it isn't either. It's applicable to anybody who makes equipment, and that's an important aspect when you're lashing out £1,000 in the UK, like I said. So warranty on this unit, believe it or not, is just 1 year in the UK. That's what it says on their website. headrushfx.com/warranty, and go and read it for yourself, all many pages of it. Yeah, it didn't impress me. I'd expected at least 2 years, and strangely enough, the processor that's inside this darn thing's got 2 years manufacturing warranty to them, but not to you. How funny is that? Well, let's sum up and consider a score at the end. So we've got summing up and conclusions right now. And if you think about it, there's no software on this darn thing. So the good thing about that is it makes it far less complex than many of the other devices that you can go and see. Because the others are more complex, because you've got two learning curves, one for the unit itself and then one for the software. And in some cases, like for real good examples, the FX3 from Fractal Audio, that thing, you'll be learning it for months. And I mean months. There's one other thing I liked about the recent G11, that pedal. It was so simple to use. But this one's not that bad. I have to admit, it's not bad, and most things you can get around yourself. So that's a good thing. I like the features it's got. I like the fact that it's got 14 separate effects that you can apply, plus even a separate microphone if you wanted to do that. But the microphone and guitar through the same unit I thought was a bit strange. But that's just me. I don't have a need for having a microphone through a unit like this. You might. Well, good on you. I don't. So that was a bit strange, but the 14 devices is good. I particularly dislike this 110, 120, 130 pound for a pedal. But what's basically a simple pedal that you can go putting down here, and they call it an expression pedal. And the reason you're buying that one is it's got a toe pad and other things that many of the cheap ones don't have. The wireless idea is a great idea, providing you can get connectivity all the time and there are no hiccups or problems. I'm not worried about the hiccups and problems here. I'd be more worried about the hiccups and problems if you needed to get at something when you go on some site somewhere and there's either no internet connectivity or no phone connectivity or no this or no that or no the other. Then you are literally left with what you've got here. And my advice for that would be to make sure you've got at least one USB stick with absolutely everything on it, because you know how these things happen. Oh my God, what's happened to my settings, you know, type of thing. So if you were going around the pubs and clubs and bars and that type of thing, having no proper backup or no fallback would be a bit of a problem, I think. So that does concern me. It also concerns me that it seems or appears to be incompatible with some TP-Link equipment and maybe others that I don't have. Might concern you too. Well, what else is there? Well, the editing software, as I said, it's bothering somewhat, that is, because, well, this is okay for what it is. It's still £1,000 device, and I can go and buy a Helix floor pedal. Might be a little bit of difference in money, but the Helix software is exceptionally good. Now you might say, ah, yeah, but Tony, you can't profile on that. You can't capture these amps, like I was talking of doing. There it is, a £3,000 or £3,500 amp. I can capture it into here, and it will all sound great. It will be exactly the same. No, it won't be the same. I've got various capturing devices, whether it be Kemper, whether it be that Tonex, should I ever make it work, whether it be this or what have you. Let's put it that way round. I don't think that they're quite in the same league as what you might think. Maybe okay if you're gigging with it somewhere. But as soon as you change the volumes or the tones or the this or the that, then you don't have the same sound. We never really did, as what this will give you, or the feel. So I think they've all jumped on the bandwagon, and I think they're all using this word capture or profile or whatever other word you want to use. You could even say copy. And that brings up another question, whether copying somebody else's equipment and tone, if they, look, the thing is, the tone's either the same or it's not the same. If it's not the same, it's not capturing it, and is it capturing something else? If it is the same, well, you should be questioning that somewhat, because, well, that's somebody's livelihood that's probably spent a very long time making that sort of equipment for some other company to come along and, well, I don't want to use the word rip-off, but it's sort of in that league. Yeah, you'll get the point. I like the idea of the number of things that you can download that makes it so the unit never becomes stale. Sometimes they go stale, if you know what I mean. So, assuming you've got connectivity, you can pull down various other people's settings, if you will. I also like the inputs and outputs. There's none of these, well, nearly none of these problems on the back. The only ones I see, and I'm looking at them right now, is the auxiliary and the headphones, which are both those tiny little 3.5-inch connectors that are, somebody turns to me and says, oh, I'm a professional musician, oh, I'm a professional this and professional that. Well, guess what? Using one of these, you're using consumer product. This is basically a consumer product, in my opinion. Because if it wasn't, it certainly wouldn't have 3.5-inch connectors stuck on there that won't last 6 months on any proper pro. I noticed another thing as well. When I put it down on the table, it rocked a little bit between this leg and this leg, just a little bit. And then I pressed it down on the table, and then it didn't rock anymore. Well, I'll be telling you something. You go figure yourself what that is, and how robust is the unit itself? I don't know. I've only had it literally for days on end, but it's a little bit concerning that it can flex. That's a sort of summing up and conclusions, really. If you want to spend £1,000, well, that's okay. Buy one of these or buy a used Helix. It depends how important that aspect of software and also that aspect of the cloning or profiling or copying or whatever you want to call it is to you. I think a lot of people will be disappointed if they think they're going to get one of these for the price of a Tonex or one of these, because you're not. It's a different solution, it's a different product, and they will never be the same. If you treat that particular aspect of this product as being what it is, well then you've got to step back and say, well, I've gained because I haven't got the software and that learning curve, or I've lost because I haven't got the software and the learning curve, or the flexibility. Okay, so what's the Tony score? Well, I'll give it a 7. And I ain't going to give it any more because I don't have any answers except to go and spend some money to make this work in here. And it doesn't quite reach the house, no, it doesn't. Make no mistake, the house is a good way that way. And the problem is that it'd cost me about 160 to 180 pounds to go and put other equipment in to satisfy the needs of this. And I have no intention of doing that whatsoever. So it's a 7 and it's staying a 7 no matter what, because this company has based its connectivity and its usability on a Wi-Fi connection. And that, to me, that's a great idea, but it must work every time. And it doesn't work every time. And I can't get, by the way, I can't find anywhere where I can actually go and type some things in that you might want to do if on other equipment, like a PC or something like that. I couldn't find any of that. So that's all against it, I'm afraid. But the good points are, it's not bad for the money. It sounds okay, which you're going to get to hear very presently now. Yeah, but it doesn't replace tube amps. It doesn't replace tube amps. It doesn't change everything, sadly. Oh, it's not sadly for me. It might be sadly for you if you can't afford a real amp. I could tell you about the manual. The manual on this one is pretty simple. It's about 60 pages long. It's worth printing if you're going to be doing a lot of stuff, but not really for very long. It's not that hard to understand. So that's it for now. Don't forget to visit www.tonymckenzie.com, where you can go and have a look at other reviews that I've done over the years that aren't on YouTube. There's still a pile of them, and some of that gear is pretty good gear. Until next time, what's coming up next time? Well, who knows at this minute? I'm going to be in America for a while. And with that comment, thanks very much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, thumbs up, and click the all button on the notifications. And then you'll know when something else is going to come up. But there's a lot of good stuff in here that you will never get to see from anywhere else. And that is really a fact. Now get out of here. Hey, it's you. Yeah, I knew you were there somewhere. Listen, don't forget to subscribe, do that thumbs up thing, and click all when you've got the notifications little section. I don't send out many notifications. You can ask anybody who subscribes, and I've got about 35,000 subscribers and still going. It's just taken a long time to get there because, well, a lot of people get misled by a lot of, well, reviews that aren't really reviews. Sadly for them, this is a real review, and I'm a real person. You can touch me. I'm getting on a bit. But don't worry about that. I'm not a whippersnapper. So, listen, I appreciate you do the subscription, the thumbs up, all for the notifications, and I appreciate you coming along here and taking a look at what I've been doing. I do a lot of interesting stuff, and oh man, I just love doing this stuff. Okay, this one's the number 1 GTR 6505 with a fat drive. Yeah, what more can you say? And what we've got here is Mr. Alan Bruce playing my guitar. Yeah, he's like that. Steals things. I mean, he's supposed to be a bass guy, but he don't play bass anymore, do you? Oh, he does. He does play bass, they say. Anyway, here he is. Okay, well here we are. Yeah, on number 14, the guitar, heavy metal. It's not really metal, but it'll do. Okay, well as you can see on the screen now, this one's number 21 guitar, British, J8 drive, but we've taken a bit of the drive off because we didn't want too much drive on a blues track really.
And the delay.
Yeah, we took the delay off too. number 25 and it said guitar. Brit 800 stack, but you knew it would be a Brit 800 stack with me. There's one down here. Yeah, it's got to be. Anyway, here we go.